Okay, I'm Doug Austin. I run a consulting company called UBD Consulting, and we work with school districts and government agencies to make them better, but I'm not going to tell you about that. Just, we do have the coolest logo of any consulting firm in the world, though, so you should check out our website and check that out. Now, this isn't going to be another angry black man rant. Well, maybe it is just a little. But there's so much for an angry black man to rant about. Why would anybody waste time talking about affirmative action, particularly in this post-racial society we supposedly live in? If, like most Americans, your opinions are shaped by images in the media, race hardly seems to matter at all anymore. Our heroes and sex symbols are often black, or at least unambiguously of color. So in order to really understand my rant, I need to provide you with some personal context. Basically, I'm old. And I know this because my kids make fun of my receding hairline. I don't wear my pants belted around my ass. I drive a minivan, and I actually kind of like it. And I really don't mind watching movies in black and white. Progressives. Because I'm old and was born in the 60s, I was a specific target of affirmative action. It helped me get summer jobs when I was a kid, helped me get into Princeton, get my first job out of college, get into graduate school at Berkeley, and it helped me get my first job out of grad school. Now, no one can say that I wasn't qualified for any of those opportunities because I succeeded at them all. So I don't have a chip on my shoulder or an inferiority complex. Despite the red herrings that opponents dangle, it's not about giving opportunities to people who are not qualified for them. But there are people out there, lots of them, and maybe even some of you, who wonder, why were you deserving of those opportunities just because you're black? Why isn't a poor white person also deserving of affirmative action? That's actually a really good question. And even though the Supreme Court tried to kill affirmative action with the 2002 Gratz case, it's still a relevant question today because affirmative action, even though it's in altered forms, still exists with institutions striving for diversity and inclusiveness. Now, media images when I was a kid aren't quite as they are today, and they paint a very different picture for our youth. So it's not surprising, perhaps, that the most unself-conscious questioning of affirmative action comes from today's youth. But who's providing their context? I sometimes hear statements from this group to the effect of, well, if I were black, I definitely would have gotten into my top choice for college. In fact, I heard that very statement uttered on NPR a couple of months ago by a graduating youth, and it's what spurred me to do this talk. What really grated on my nerves about that comment was what typically comes next: nothing. Ignorance begets ignorance, and even on NPR, no one probed. What I really want to hear after a statement like that is something like this. If you're a black kid in this country, you're almost 3 times as likely as a white kid to be poor. So you might not even be able to afford that first choice college. And that poverty brings with it a whole host of other concerns, from hunger to poor health to crime. If you're black, you're twice as likely as whites to be unemployed, and even more than that if you count discouraged workers. So if you're a black high school student, you might have to take a job, you might even have to drop out of school to support your family. And while we do have a black middle class, black workers, on average, earn only 2/3 as much as whites. So if you do go to college and you have to depend on your family for help, you're likely to end up with a lot more debt when you get done. And while we have made strides at reducing the income gap, the wealth gap is actually still increasing. Whites, on average, have 15 times more accumulated wealth than blacks. And if you don't count home ownership, it's more like 90 times. And there's no bigger factor in determining who goes to college than family wealth. Also, if you're black, somewhere along the line, you've had to deal with the racial biases of teachers who had low expectations of you, school administrators who didn't have college in mind for you, and counselors who followed that lead and steered you towards junior college or vocational work. If you happen to buck that trend and end up in college anyway, you're likely to have a much weaker support system of family and friends who've also experienced college, because blacks are 3 times as likely as whites to be the first in their family to attend college. You see, affirmative action is meant to recognize the many obstacles to equality that minorities face along the way. If you happen to have to deal with all or even some of those issues and you did pretty well, imagine how well you could have done if the playing field were truly level. Now, the hypocrites in the media would have you believe that affirmative action started in the 60s and 70s as a way to assuage white liberals of their guilt over the condition of blacks in America. They've effectively distorted the issue and coined terms like reverse racism. But whites are actually the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action. The Naturalization Act of 1790 gave citizenship only to whites. The Homestead Act of 1862 allowed only whites to purchase frontier land. And starting in 1934, for the first 30 years of the FHA program, it made home loans to whites only. There's your wealth gap. So the next time somebody says, if I were black, I definitely would have gotten into my top choice, the response should be, honey, if you were black, you might not even be thinking about college. And if your black classmates had the historical advantages that you had, they might be going to that top choice too. Thank you.